Good morning, good morning. My name is Owolabi Adeleke. I'll be taking you through biology today, and the topic we'll be studying is genetics. Genetics is one interesting aspect of biology. The person who studies genetics is called a geneticist. A man or woman who focus on major on genetics is called geneticist. What is genetics? Genetics is the scientific study of heredity and variation. Genetics is the scientific study of heredity and variation. So genetics looks into two major aspects. It looks into heredity and it looks into variation. The man who did the most research work on genetics is actually Charles Darwin. So most of his research today has formed the foundation for our study in genetics. The father of genetics can be said to be Charles Darwin. I told you that genetics looks into two aspects, heredity and variation. What is heredity? Heredity can otherwise be regarded as inheritance, which is the transmission and expression of traits or character from parents to their offspring. Heredity is regarded as transmission and expression of traits or character from parent to their offspring. Heredity can otherwise be regarded as inheritance. The second part of genetics is variation. We told ourselves that genetics looks into two things, heredity and variation. The second part is variation. While heredity has to do with transmission of traits, variation is the difference that exists among organisms of the same species. Variation is the difference that exists among organisms of the same species. If you look into your class, you will see that all of you are not the same. Some have big head, some have small head. Some have big mouth, some have small. Some have big stature, some are small. Some are slim, some are fat. Some are short, some are tall. That is variation. Variation gives account of differences that exist among organisms of the same species. All right. Variation may be morphological or physiological, and it can be acquired or inherited. Variation that is morphological is the variation that you can see with your naked eyes. For example, somebody has big head, I have small head. That is morphological. But when you talk about genotype, I cannot see it. The things that are different in individuals but that cannot be expressed outwardly, those ones are physiological variation. And you can acquire variation. It can be passed from one parent to another. It can be inherited. That is, your parent can transfer it to you and you can acquire it. Somebody who has big muscle by carrying weight, heavy weight, is an acquired thing. Heredity accounts for transfer of traits and that are expressed, but variation accounts for differences. Heredity accounts for, traits that are transmitted, but variation accounts for differences. Let us look at some of the traits or character that can be transmitted from parent to their offspring. Let us look at inheritable character. Examples of heritable character, that is character that can be transferred, include tongue rolling, ability to test PTC, intelligence, blood group, color of the skin, color of the hair, color of the eye, height, weight, blood grouping, sickle cell, hemophilia. All of these things are transmittable in animals. Okay, don't forget that has to do with inheritance. I told you heredity has to do with transmission of traits. In plant, however, we have examples like shape of leaf, fruit, shape of fruit, shape of seed, taste of fruit, size of leaf, growth pattern, adaptability to harsh environmental condition, height of plant, weight of seed, food content in fruit. These are examples of character that can be transmitted in plants. I need you to please understand that character is not the same as behavior. In genetics, character represents features, it represents traits, it represents qualities. Okay, so please mind you, whenever we talk about character in genetics, be very careful. Okay, as we continue in our study of genetics, there are terminologies that we will be using consistently, and we need to start getting ourselves used to them in the study of genetics. We'll be looking at terminologies like gene, chromosome, gamete, zygote, locus, homozygote, heterozygote, alleles or allelomorph, dominance gene, recessive gene, crossing, testing. There are about 20 of these qualities that you will be looking at as you go through the study of genetics. So you should be able to define them. Under exam condition, you can be asked to define a gene. What is a gene? A gene is defined as unit of inheritance. Genes are located on the chromosome. They are the component of the cell responsible for character transmission. What is responsible for transmission of behavior? If you have a tall father and you become tall, what helps you to transmit that tallness is the gene. Gene is defined as unit of inheritance. They are located on the chromosome. They are the ones responsible for character transmission. Whatever you are going to pass from your child, from yourself to your child, will be carried in the gene. Okay, and on the gene, you'll be talking about having DNAs. That is why you see that when there is paternity dispute, they will tell you to go and check the DNA so that they can check what has been transmitted either from the father or the mother to the child. Gene is the unit of inheritance. What about chromosome? Chromosomes are rod or thread-like structures that carry the gene. They are located in the nucleus of a cell. Chromosomes are rod or thread-like structures that carry the gene. They are located in the nucleus of a cell. I expect you, as you are going through this class now, by now, you should be able to define genetics. You should be able to define heredity. You should be able to define variation. You should be able to mention types of variation. You should be able to mention characteristics or traits that can be transmitted in animals and in plants. You should be able to define gene, and you should be able to define chromosome. We are talking about chromosome, and we said that chromosomes are rod or thread-like structures that carry the gene. Don't forget, we told ourselves that the gene is located on the chromosome. The genes are responsible for character transmission, and those genes are located on the chromosome. And the chromosome itself is located in the nucleus. So far, we have looked at genetics. I told you that genetics is a scientific study of heredity and variation. Okay, now let us look at gametes. What are gametes? Gametes are mature sex cells that take part in sexual reproduction. Gametes are mature sex cells that take part in sexual reproduction. Gamete is not the same thing as sex organ. Okay, sex organ, let's say in animal or in man, for example, sex organ can be penis. In woman, it can be vagina, but that is not the same thing with gamete. Gamete are cells, matured cells that take part in sexual reproduction. In animal, for example, male gamete is actually the spermatozoon, but in plant, male gamete is the pollen grain. But in plant, in female, for example, in animals, female gamete is the ovum or egg. But in plants, their female gamete is actually oval, meaning that there are two types of gamete. Okay, so meaning we have what we call the male gamete and the female gamete. What did I say gametes are? Gametes are mature sex cells that take part in what sexual reproduction. What did I say gene is? I said genes are unit of inheritance. What did I say chromosomes are? I said chromosomes are rod or thread-like structures that carry the gene that are located in the nucleus. I have told you that for animals, we refer to the male gamete as spermatozoon, but in plants, we refer to them as what? As pollen grain. If somebody asks you, what is the male gamete called in animal? The answer is spermatozoon. What is the male gamete called in plant? The answer is pollen grain. What is the female gamete called in animal? The answer is ovum or egg. What is the female gamete called in plant? The answer is oval. Okay. Now, what are the units of inheritance? The answer is gene. What is the structure that carries the gene? The answer is chromosome. How many types of variation can we say we have? We can say two, morphological and physiological. What type of variation is expressed that you can see outwardly? These ones are morphological. What type of variation is it that we cannot see with our naked eyes that are inside the body? These ones are physiological. How many parts is the study of genetics divided? We can say two. What are they? Heredity and variation. Okay, what is heredity? It is the transmission of traits from parent to offspring. What is variation? Variation is difference that exists among organisms of the same species. Thank you very much. We will still be looking further in our subsequent classes on the other terms that we use in the study of genetics. I have told you, you have quite a lot of things to memorize. I still remain your teacher, Mr. Owolabi Adeleke, from the White Garden College. Please make sure you jot down something, construct questions for yourself, and get ready to face questions as soon as you resume back to school. I will be waiting for you. I'll be waiting for you to receive you back to school. We have missed all of you. This class can be useful for any of you in all classes. It depends on what you expect.